Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. The MMA Sucka Podcast. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the editor-in-chief at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. How you doing today, sir?
Yeah, it's all good, thank you, mate. We're coming off the back of a fairly good UFC London card. It was a bit dicey in times, and then we look ahead to a fairly, on paper, fairly dicey UFC 277 pay-per-view. But I think what the UFC have done is they've pre-booked UFC 280 in Abu Dhabi and UFC 279 and kind of spent all their budget on that already. And they're going to struggle to fill the UFC 277 card, which, on paper, like I said, it's not great, but I know we shouldn't be looking forward to October already. Never wish your life away, but that is looking like a tasty card. So, be sure to check out. I did a solo podcast earlier on in the week breaking down.
Yes, that looked great. That was amazing. Thanks for doing that, man.
It was too good an opportunity to miss. So, UFC 279 and 280. Big fights announced for that. So, be sure to check the podcast out that we did earlier on in the week. But, this pay-per-view is a not get up in the morning kind of pay-per-view for us Brits.
But let's talk about UFC London a bit. Maybe not a great card, maybe not a disappointing card. Certainly one of the fight events that existed. I don't know how else to frame it. It had high points, but it had a lot of very dull points. Not necessarily even that low points, but let's start right from the very top. The main event, Tom Aspinall landed a kick that would have chopped a small village in half. And Curtis Blaydes took it right on the meat of the thigh. At some point, the MCL, that's what Bisping at least told us, the MCL got disconnected and that caused excruciating pain. What are we talking? 15 seconds into round one. What did we learn from this fight? And it kind of sucks because we know that ACL, MCL tears in a young fighter, that's career changing. I'm sad for Tom Aspinall because of the opportunity in the main event that was missed and potentially the future as well. Frazer, what did you see in the fight? What's the future of these two guys?
Yeah, for sure. It's disappointing because the fight was shaping up to be a fun fight. Curtis Blaydes was timing Tom Aspinall well. Aspinall was, charging forward straight away, put Curtis on his back foot, pressed him up against the octagon. And, officially it's 15 seconds. It was 12 seconds, really. By the time that he landed the kick and stepped back and before Herb manages to step in, we're talking a 12-second fight. And, yeah, like you say, from what I'm hearing, it is an MCL tear. And he did go into the fight, not with an injury, but he has had knee issues, and they were debating in the team whether to have the knee operated on and pull out of the fight or.
I didn't know that's okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it came as a huge surprise to Tom Aspinall that his knee went, and it's just a shame that it went in the biggest fight of his life on the biggest stage that he's had. Main eventing again. Many people expected him in March just to run through Volkov, and that's exactly what he did.
Yes.
Now, there was real questions going into this fight, and unfortunately, none of those questions have been answered, really. And I had a bit of a debate with a guy on Twitter. I said that, arguably, should this be a no contest? Yes. If we look at it, two fights stand out for me is last weekend with Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez. Now, at least we got the best part of 5 minutes for that fight. It was 4.5 minutes before the fight was called due to the injury. To what degree did Yair Rodriguez cause that injury on Brian Ortega by putting him in the submission? And we learned a lot from that fight. We learned that Brian Ortega's takedowns are still pretty poor. We learned that Yair Rodriguez was willing to try and wrap Ortega up in a submission rather than just trying to hold and get back to his feet. And we learned that Yair Rodriguez still has huge holes in his defense. Going back a few weeks, Alexander Rakic, Jan Blachowicz, you could argue that knee injury was caused by Jan Blachowicz checking pretty much every leg kick that Rakic threw at him.
Yeah.
Did Curtis Blaydes cause this injury on Tom Aspinall after 12 seconds? It's certainly to be debated. I don't disagree with the TKO, but after such a short amount of time, you're talking the guys engaged for a total of about 10 seconds.
Yeah,
did Curtis Blaydes cause that injury? I'm not so sure, but I don't disagree with the TKO, but there's certainly a conversation for a no contest, in my opinion.
You could make the argument, but obviously you get the other side of it too. Of a fighter has declared that he cannot continue for whatever reason. It's the same with Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman. He didn't throw a kick, he didn't throw a single strike, and he still got the TKO win. It's just kind of the way You couldn't label it no contest. I don't disagree with you on that. It's just the way that we label fights, and a lot of this, as we've mentioned, is an antiquated system from centuries of boxing. Of like, this is just how we've always done it. Fighter says he can't continue because whatever, so it's a TKO for the other guy. If you want to call it a no contest, I'm not gonna fight with you. That's fine.
Yeah,
I think fair.
For the good of the division, I'm glad that it did go down as a TKO or a KO. You know, Curtis Blaydes now moves on. He came to London. He came looking to get his hand raised and, you know, get your hand raised by any means necessary. And he did that. For Tom Aspinall, I'm glad that Tom Aspinall is only, 29, I think Tom Aspinall is, because he can.
For a heavyweight.
Exactly. He can come again. He's got 10 years left in the division. You know, look at Daniel Cormier, who's fighting into his late 30s.
Yeah.
It's disappointing for Tom Aspinall because, you know, especially from our perspective, he's 29. He's 29 in April, so he's not 30 until next April.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm worried about is that these guys, you know, are huge guys, and Tom Aspinall, what did he weigh in at? 250 odd. You know, that's going to put even more weight on the leg of Tom Aspinall when he's rehabbing it. Let's say he fights, for example, Tai Tuivasa next. Tai Tuivasa is going to slam the leg kick, and it's not a flyweight leg kick. This is a heavyweight leg kick. There's 265, 270 pounds behind these leg kicks. Yeah. He has to make sure that his leg is as close to 100% as he can get it before stepping back in the octagon. Otherwise, you know, he's going in with a huge disadvantage. If he rushes this back and looks to fight at the end of the year, in my opinion, it'd be a mistake. But you know, that's up to Aspinall, that's up to his team, that's up to the doctors. That, you know, if it's an MCL tear, luckily it's not an ACL tear. Let's hope that we can see him back. You know, maybe headlining again next March in London. But again, I personally wouldn't risk it. I'd maybe have him sit out for a year. At 29, sitting out for a year is not a bad thing. And we've seen him sit out for prolonged periods of time before. You know, he fought in 2016, and then he returned on Cage Warriors in 2019. He sat out for 3 years, and, you know, was undefeated coming back from that. You know, as he returned from 2016, you know, on paper he's undefeated since 2016. Well, he had a 3-year hiatus. He had a boxing fight, but he sort of, you know, was working on other areas. Sit out for another year. By this time next year, he'll still only be 30. You know, you compare that to the rest of the division. He's still young. You know, Curtis Blaydes is still young, 31 for a heavyweight.
It's a baby.
Not old at all. You know, and you look at the other guys in the heavyweight division. Derek Lewis fighting this weekend, 37. You know, Tai Tuivasa, who fights Cyril Gane. I don't think Tai's too old either. So, you know, Tai Tuivasa, same age as Tom Aspinall, 29. These guys are younger guys, and, you know, it's good because it means that we've got a future of the heavyweight division, and you've got Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes, Tai Tuivasa. Cyril Gane's only 32. I'm not quite sure how old the champion is, but I know that Gane is slightly older than the rest of the guys. Yeah, and Gane is 35, but he's also an athletic freak. But, you know, so we can't really quite put him in the same conversation. But we had a time where it was, you know, Stipe Miocic, who is one of the older fighters, and not, you know, he's 39 in age, and he's probably about 59 in wars and in combat age. Yeah. And Daniel Cormier, who was, you know, an aging competitor in the division. You got John Jones, who isn't getting any younger. And at one point, we were having, you know, we had the trilogy between Stipe and Daniel Cormier, and these guys were older fighters. And now you've got another 5 to 10 years of some of the top guys in the division. You know, this was seen as one of the semi-finals, Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall. Yeah. And then you've got the UFC Paris main event between Tai Tuivasa and Cyril Gane as the other main event. Them two guys, the winner of those two fights, fight each other and go on to fight the champion, whoever that is at the time.
Certainly.
Let's do a round robin tournament of these 4 guys. You know, these guys are all under, you know, Cyril Gane's the oldest at 32. And I don't think he's in his prime. You know, we saw that last time out that he wasn't in his prime. But going back to Tom Aspinall, for me, take a year off, you know, rehab that injury and make sure that injury is 100%. Because like I say, big guys, these are big guys. If he takes a kick wrong, you could tear his MCL
Yeah.
again, and we could see him out for even longer, and he'll never quite live up to the potential. But like I say, disappointing end to the main event. But if your body's not ready for combat, your body's not ready for combat.
Yeah, it sucks. It's such a deflated balloon moment, and you really hope for the future of Tom Aspinall, because if he rushes back into the gym and doesn't rehab it properly, knees may never recover in the best of times. You might just be at 90% capacity for the rest of your life. Kind of best case scenario. Knees are a rough one to recover, but yeah, hoping him all the best. Hopefully he recovers from this one. Just a real. This was the topper to like what we deserved from the. You know what I mean? Of like March was too good. We paid for it now.
Exactly. It was through no fault of, I don't think, the fighters. It was anticlimactic that the event after, at the end of the day, though, you're not going to get a night like we did in March. And
no, that was magic. It was serendipitous. Like John Gooden said, like March was like something special was going on in March.
For sure. It was the first event back in London since COVID, since I think it was I can't remember the last event.
It was Leon Edwards Kamaru Usman was the cancelled one. That's how long we've been sitting around. I don't know what the last actual one was.
I mean, it was the main event was meant to be Edwards Woodley, so that shows how far. And Woodley's had 2 fights in the UFC, 2 boxing matches against Jake Paul. So that kind of shows that the want for a fight night that the UK fans wanted, and they got it. And in March, like we say, that night is that is certainly an anomaly. But there were good performances on this fight night card, and
we'll get to them too. We'll get to them.
The difficult thing was, I think, the main card didn't exactly start out great, and then you had fan favorite Molly McCann putting on the performance that she did, but then you had a fan favorite in Gustafsson getting absolutely flatlined. Then you had Paddy Pimblett, who that first round, you get the crowd all pumped up, and it was a little bit, for a British crowd, that's a little bit of a boring round because it's mostly wrestling. There's not a lot of action.
It was a great round for us. That was a great round.
It was a great round. We finally saw Paddy Pimblett slightly challenged. And then you go into the co-main event that everyone in the back of their mind is thinking, it's supposed to be Darren Till making the walk here. And then you go into the main event, and the main event lasts, 15 seconds, 12 seconds. So, it is what it is. I think, like we say, it's never going to live up to March, but there were certainly some standout performances on this card.
One of which was not Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson fought Jack Hermanson's fight. As we've talked about, he is a challenging fight for anyone in the division. He will do the same game plan against anyone and will challenge anyone in this division. Chris Curtis couldn't cut the cage, couldn't figure anything out, and Jack Hermanson just walked circles around him as he does in every fight. Jack Hermanson is not an overly talented fighter. He's not an overly young fighter. He doesn't move up in rank from this. And he doesn't. His stock certainly doesn't get raised from this. But I don't think we learned anything from this fight. What did you see in the Jack Hermanson Chris Curtis co-main event?
No, for sure. I think for me, I was disappointed with Chris Curtis's reaction to the end of the fight. He was saying, someone stand in the middle and fight me. Well, I've won 14 minutes of the fight. Why am I now going to just stand in the middle and trade with you and risk getting knocked out? I'm not going to do that.
No.
I didn't like the way he handled it post-fight, and then almost post-fight, we saw them, hugging backstage. Jack Hermanson was the one apologising in the cage. He's got nothing to apologise about. No. He's just gone on a 15-minute clinic against Chris Curtis, who's a dangerous guy.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. That fight, I think it was a little bit, maybe, to be honest, I think for fans, that was a go to the bar and get a beer fight. You just had Paddy Pimblett. You go to the bar and get a beer for the main event, and by the looks of it, you've got to down your beer and get out of the arena because it only lasted 15 seconds, the main event. But like you say, Jack Hermanson doesn't move up in the rankings. Chris Curtis, he wasn't ranked, but he doesn't move down. I don't think his stock goes down at all.
No, it doesn't go down. It just
it just stagnates a little bit. And but Chris Curtis was fun all week, and what's next for both men? I think Chris Curtis potentially gets another ranked opponent at middleweight. Brad Tavares is still ranked. Uriah Hall's still ranked.
Yep.
Both of them coming off losses. And for Jack Hermanson, don't really know what you do with Jack Hermanson. But maybe Derek Brunson. But does Jack Hermanson deserve such a big step up in the rankings? Hermanson's 8th, Brunson's 4th. If you look at the state of the division, you got Whitaker, Cannonier, Vittori, Brunson, Alex Pereira, Paulo Costa, and Sean Strickland. Now, do you rebook the Darren Till fight?
No. Well, maybe actually. Yeah.
We don't know how long Till's going to be out for, but potentially that's the fight to make. Number 8 versus number 9. But it was definitely a fight on the card that probably went how we predicted it would go, unless Chris Curtis could land that bomb. And he wasn't able to cut the cage off. He didn't do a good job of trying to cut the cage off, and he was it was ones and twos rather than, if you're going to beat Jack Manson, you've got to do 3, 4s, 5s, and 6s, because we know that he's got that herky jerky movement where you're going to miss the first 4 or 5 shots, and then you might land the 5th and 6th.
He's a good overall counter fighter. He's good. He's good in every position. Jack Manson is a good fighter, and he solidly won this fight. It was just underwhelming, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think no disrespect to Jack Manson, but I don't think they're going to get anywhere near a title shot.
No.
And that's maybe just due to the strength of the division above him. That's nothing against him. It's just the middleweight division's got plenty of contenders in Whitaker, Vasori, Paulo Costa, Alex Pereira, and then you've got the champion Israel Adesanya. So it's going to be difficult for Jack Manson to really put a run together, but I'm glad that he rebounded here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like Jack. He's a sweet guy. He's very nice. I like his smile and stuff. Chris Curtis, super cool guy. So I hope all the best for him. But yeah, just couldn't figure out any cage cutting. And you and I remember thinking like the momentum's on his side. This is kind of his coming out party. This is a great fight for him. Couldn't figure out anything. I think maybe part of it, as other people alluded to, of the bigger cage, I don't think he knew how to fight it. And he's fought in the Apex exclusively, and now he's fighting in the bigger cage against a very elusive fighter in Jack Hermansson. I just didn't think he had any clue as to how to fight in that bigger cage as well. There was a lot of factors, evidently, that were working against him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even realize. I didn't, clock on that it was obviously the bigger cage, and he wasn't able to cut it off. But also, Hermansson coming in. Curtis coming in on late notice to fight Jack Hermansson. For Jack Hermansson, the key to victory really was to take Chris Curtis down, and we know that Chris Curtis has got heavy hands. Take him down and hold him there. Test his cardio coming in on late notice. Don't sort of risk standing with this guy. I think Chris Curtis maybe thought that that's what Jack Hermansson would do, is look to take him down. Mm-hmm. And he just completely mixed up the game plan, pumping the jab out there all night, front kicks up the middle to keep the distance between the two. And that's how you fight a heavy hitter like Chris Curtis, is keep your distance and keep the long shots coming. You want to keep the jab out there. You want to keep the kicks up the middle, and you want to attack the legs to slow him down, slow his forward momentum, and that's exactly what Hermansson did. I think it was a really good performance by Jack Hermansson, just unfortunately not one that we'll remember because it went to decision.
Anyway, so we'll move down to Paddy Pimblett. This was maybe the high point of the night, the boys' main event, the main event for people there. Paddy Pimblett was partially out wrestled and was able to reverse positions, was able to come back in the second round and submit someone who started wrestling in high school. I genuinely think this was actually quite a good performance from Paddy Pimblett. He showed more skills than I was giving him credit for, and I think he should be proud of this performance. The future of Paddy Pimblett, I'm not going to say he's not a Conor McGregor or anything like that, but I think he's going to fight for a title at a high point of his career, at worst in his career. I think that's how high he'll make it. What do you think of the future of Paddy Pimblett? Maybe I'm just on the hype train now. I don't know. What do you think? What'd you see in this fight? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all week him and Molly McCann stole the headlines all week.
Absolutely.
The amount of times that we saw their faces in comparison to Curtis Blaydes and Tom Aspinall was surprising, to be honest, because they nailed the engagement this week. You couldn't open up Instagram, you couldn't open up Twitter without seeing Molly McCann and Paddy Pimblett. And for Paddy to come in and put on the performance that he did, like you say, he was largely out wrestled. He probably lost that first round. There wasn't an awful lot of damage done on either side, but maybe you could edge it to Paddy Pimblett due to the end, the last 30 seconds to a minute of that round when he did get on top and he was raining down on Jordan Levitt.
Yeah.
Levitt looked like a different weight class. Paddy Pimblett looked huge in there. On paper, you see, Jordan Levitt took Paddy Pimblett down 3 times. Paddy took Jordan down once, but Paddy tried 4 different submissions. Now, if you look at the submission, the reason that submission came, I wouldn't say easily to Paddy, but the reason that he didn't have an awful lot of stuff coming back from Jordan Levitt is that with the body triangle, he traps trying to work it out, but yeah, I think he traps the right arm of Jordan Levitt in the body triangle. And then so Jordan's only got one hand to try and pull or alleviate the pressure on his neck or pull down. Absolutely phenomenal stuff by Paddy Pimblett. And then he gets on the mic, preaches about men's mental health to speak out, and that's what we need. That's, you know, he could have easily got on the mic there and just, you know, gone, oh yeah, I teabagged him like I said I would. I said I'd run through him in a minute. I'm not happy with my performance. Call out, you know, all and sundry. But he stole the headlines. You know,
yes,
the BBC, the casual sort of like lad Bible shit on Facebook, are now saying, oh, look at what this UFC fighter's done. And to find out that he, you know, sadly lost his friend or found out just before he weighed in, and then to go on with all that pressure. Let's be honest, Paddy Pimblett had a lot of pressure, especially after the performance of Molly McCann on his shoulders, especially knowing how the card had gone previously. You know, lots of decisions, lots of not British friendly decisions, should we say, as far as wrestling heavy decisions, you know.
Yeah.
And to go out there and put on that performance after arguably losing the first round to a guy that you thought that you just run through. I genuinely believe that he did think that he just run through Jordan Levitt.
I think so too,
and you know, now we're instantly asking with a guy as on such a hot streak as Paddy Pimblett, we're instantly asking what's next, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. And I'll throw a couple more things at you. Paddy Pimblett, Jordan Levitt. It's good to face adversity in your fights and show that you can overcome those issues. That's actually a very mature thing of you can show development in the cage. Maybe your mind's not quite right for the first few minutes of the fight. He got over it. He showed counters to the stuff that he was struggling with. That's very good. Paddy is a weirdly good speaker. So I asked him one question. I asked him maybe two questions in the press conference, but he talked for 7 minutes straight. And here's where I got sold on Paddy, is he talked for 7 minutes straight, and I was in the fifth row because I'm unimportant. He didn't break eye contact with me. He looked at me for 7 minutes while he answered my question. This guy is so naturally charismatic. It is ridiculous. Like, the future of Paddy, I can see why the UFC is throwing money at this kid of like, he can sell a fight. The future, does he get it into the top 10? Sorry, not top 10, top 15? Or do you kind of give him another warm-up fight? What do you think?
Yeah, so I wrote a post-fight, immediate aftermath post-fight piece on it, going through, and just touching on what you said there. If you're a casual fan, you don't know that stuff. I didn't know that until you've just said it now. How he engages the media as he does. You see on Instagram or on Twitter, doing what he did at the weigh-ins, saying what he says. He does come across as a bit of a joker, not really taking it seriously. He balloons up between fights, but then you see that switch, and it's something that I really like from Paddy. He does the walkout. He's giving it everyone. He's trying to get the crowd riled up. The second he steps through the cage, he doesn't take his eyes off his opponent, and he's done it in every fight so far. And like you say, it's good for him to face that adversity, because comparing him to Cyril Gane, absolute rise to the top, never been wrestled, gets out wrestled by Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou, never been wrestled, gets out wrestled by Stipe Miocic. Now, we've seen the sort of flaws in Paddy Pimblett's game. He is susceptible to be taken down. He can be controlled on the ground, and he can be clipped. That's his first fight, especially. It was clipped. That's the whole, Scousers don't get knocked out thing. But people aren't going to be afraid to fight Paddy Pimblett, because they know for a fact that all the eyes will be on them, and they know for a fact that he's got his vulnerabilities, as does every fighter. But that we know his vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited for the future of Paddy Pimblett. I think in my piece I alluded to what could be next. He's got the history with Ilia Topuria, but I don't know if the UFC make that fight, because that is a risky fight.
No, I think Ilia Topuria lights him up.
Exactly, yeah. And for me, I want to see Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green at MSG. I think that would be a phenomenal fight, because Paddy has got a more well-rounded game, in my opinion, than Bobby Green. He's probably not as good as a boxer. He utilizes kicks a little better, and he's a better wrestler than Bobby Green. Or he'll look to wrestle, whereas Bobby Green won't. Yeah. Bobby Green, none of these guys are ranked. Bobby Green's a huge name, having stepped in on short notice against Islam Makhachev. Yeah. I don't know the injury that kept him out of the Jim Miller fight a few weeks ago when Jim Miller fought Donald Cerrone. I'm not sure what that injury was, but he's got until November to rehab. I think it's November the 20th or November the 5th. I can't remember the MSG day, but it's definitely November. Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green for me is a fight to make, and a win over Bobby Green gets you in the top 15. He's a gatekeeper to the top 15.
Yeah,
Both guys will talk before the fight. They'll talk during the fight, and it's a competitive fight in my opinion. You know, Bobby Green is on the wrong side of his prime. Paddy Pimblett is on the right side of his prime, and I think I really do think that's the fight to make. Will it be the fight to make? Will it be the fight that's made? I doubt it, but I think that's the fight to make in my opinion.
I love that matchup. Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. Come on. That's a good one. That's a really good matchup. Let's move down to the sad fight. Nikita Krylov on one foot, not even fully planted. Oh, man. Just gets an uppercut knockout against Alexander Gustafsson. This was heartbreaking. It's not even a full power uppercut.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's Gustafsson's combat age is catching up with him, and we saw that against Krylov, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, nothing else to say.
There's not much to say on it. It lasted a little over a minute, and Gus was battered for a little over a minute. Does he retire? I think so. I think in my opinion, putting him against a ranked guy in Krylov wasn't the right. Krylov was coming off the back of the disappointing Paul Craig fight, and in March, and to put him against Gustafsson, who was scheduled to fight a heavyweight a few months ago. I didn't get it. You know, Gustafsson, he's never officially the interim champion. He's competed for the belt 3 times. He's headlined multiple events. I think what we'll do with Gustafsson is give him an easy fight in Sweden at the end of the year. I know there's a fight night in Sweden, and then give him an easy fight and let him ride off into the sunset. I don't want to see him headlining that Sweden card at all. I want to see him co-headlining against someone who is, unfortunately, someone who's beatable for Gustafsson, which I know we shouldn't be saying that, but I do.
No, and this actually isn't even something that the UFC are against doing, of like some retiring fighter who can sell tickets, retiring off to the sunset. You remember like all the softball fights that they gave Mirko Cro Cop whenever they go to Europe? Like they signed him for one fight. He was fighting in Rise. Suddenly shows up in the UFC when they were in like, man. Oh yeah, he fights Gabe Gonzaga in Poland. Just like one off. He never came back to the UFC ever again. Before that, when they went to Germany, he beat up like Mustafa Al-Turk or something like that. Yeah, Mustafa Al-Turk at UFC 99. Mustafa Al-Turk doesn't even fight for the UFC at that time. You know what I mean? So yeah, exactly. The UFC is not opposed to doing those kinds of things, which like we all see it coming, but like
unless you're Nate Diaz.
Man,
unless you're Nate Diaz, but that's a conversation for another day. I don't know. I don't know who Nate Diaz is pissed off. He's pissed off Dana White, and they've fed him to Khamzat Chimaev. But that's an anomaly. But that was going to be a rough one for Nate. But yeah, going back to like you say, they're not opposed to giving retiring legends
something
straightforward fights, and I think that's what they should do with Gustafsson. I don't want to see Gustafsson in there with Paul Craig or another ranked guy or a young guy. I just think Gustafsson needs to ride off into the sunset on a win in his home country of Sweden.
I don't know. And if you're trying to do that for some guy who's developing, Fabricio Verdum was always kind of that's an insane matchup. This guy may be one of the great top 5, top 3 best heavyweights in history on the other side of his career. And you're going to have him face a debuting light heavyweight going to heavyweight. That was always dirty. And now you're going to have him fight a top 10 at light heavyweight. Give this man a break.
Exactly. And if you just look at the light heavyweight rankings, there's no one really, in my opinion, that he beats in the top 10. In the top 15, sorry. Jimmy Crute, I think that's a tough matchup. Jimmy Crute's younger, he's hungrier. Justin Jacoby's looked absolutely phenomenal as of late. Johnny Walker's
so good.
I want to see Justin Jacoby fight, looking ahead, wanting to fight Volkan Ozdemir. That's the fight to make for me. Johnny Walker, Ryan Spann, you got Krylov at 11, obviously doesn't beat him, Jamal Hill, and then you're into the top 10 where he gets absolutely, unfortunately, I think he gets finished by most of the guys in the top 10.
Sucks to see. It's
you don't want to see that, especially from a guy that's done so much for the sport, especially in Europe, but also done so much for the if you remember his UFC 232 fight against John Jones, the location got changed to the other side of America on I think maybe 2 days before, 1 day before, but he's lost Gustafsson. Now, going back to that John Jones fight, his first John Jones fight, didn't quite realize how bad his record is, to be honest. He's 7-3 in it. 3-7. He did beat Jimmy Manuwa in the main event. You
Who
got
doesn't beat Jimmy Manoa?
I mean, Alexander Rakic this weekend, if you heard the news, did you hear that? Jimmy Manoa sort of sucker punched Rakic. Not sure how much I agree with that.
This was in UFC London, just the one that was happening, or was this years ago?
No, this was this weekend because obviously they fought, didn't they? That was Jimmy Manoa's last professional fight. Rakic sent him to the shadow round with that head kick.
Yeah,
and for whatever reason, they must have gone back and forth on online, and Manoa sucker punched him. But yeah, for me, going back to Gustafsson, 7-3 in his last 10 fights, you don't want to see that for a guy who's already retired once and returned. So yeah, whether it be at heavyweight, which I hope it's not, but let's hope 205 on a full camp in Sweden at the end of the year, retires and calls it a day, because he is a legend of the sport. That fight against John Jones entered the Hall of Fame. He got his jacket this weekend, and
well deserved.
we don't want to see. We don't. I don't need to see Gustafsson get beaten up anymore.
No,
so
there's not much left.
Gimme fight for Gustafsson.
Yeah, man, it's rough. Anyway, Meatball gets it done. Round 1, spinning back elbow combined with punches knockout. She does it again. She adds another one to the highlight reel. 2 in the same year, 2 in the same building. Meatball Molly McCann earns a first round TKO finish against Hannah Goldie and lights this card needed it. This card really needed that energy boost. What do you think of Molly McCann knocking out Hannah Goldie?
Yeah, I completely agree that it needed it. Paul Craig was
fighting Paul Craig's fight.
I mean, I don't want to touch on the fight too much because it was just meh. Yeah. It was just, I know we're talking about Molly McCann's fight, but Paul Craig is just going there and flopping on the floor or not driving through with a double leg. Try and get on top of Volkan Ozdemir, because we've seen holes in Volkan Ozdemir's game when he's the bottom fighter. That was 15 minutes of a fairly uneventful, disappointing fight. Paul Craig missed an opportunity there. And then you're thinking, exactly. And it's just showed how one-dimensional he is, because he did look good on the feet, but he just didn't want to risk it against Ozdemir, which you can't really blame him for. But going back to Molly McCann,
Ozdemir and Krylov both called each other out in the press conference without knowing it, so that's probably the next fight. And that's a great fight.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're gonna get 2 guys that are gonna at least walk forward and want to fight. Paul Craig, he always wants to fight, but he didn't want to exchange. It's disappointing, especially Paul Craig gonna Paul Craig, and he's gonna pull guard, and it's a shame, but it is what it is. But yeah, going back to Molly McCann, she just does what she does. And I don't think she saw any danger from Hannah Goldie, and no disrespect to Goldie, but rightfully so. Goldie was put in that position to lose to Molly McCann. Hannah Goldie, she was 1-2 in the UFC heading into the bout, with her only win coming against Emily Whitmire last time out. But she had a spout of pullouts. She had almost a year off. Yep. She lost to girls that realistically aren't great fighters, to be honest. And then you go in there against Molly McCann, that run of form for Molly McCann. She had the fight of the night back in September last year. That spinning back elbow against Louina Carolina, and then I think this performance as a whole, maybe not the knockout, but the performance as a whole, was better than a performance in March, because she dominated. There was one time where Goldie looked to get it to the floor, and as soon as they popped back up, there was a massive overhand right from Molly McCann, knocking Goldie back into the fence, the spinning back elbow, and then she put an absolute stamp, and we're automatically already looking at what's next for Molly McCann. Now,
Antonina Shevchenko, that is a good call out. That is like on her level call out. That's a good one
for sure. I wrote a piece on MMA Sucka this week, matching. I can't say it, there's too many M's. Matchmaking Meatball Molly McCann, and she called out Antonina Shevchenko, and it was a respectful call out. And I put 2 other suggestions there. Tracy Cortez, for me, would be a really good fight, because she's ranked. She's not a huge name other than being the girlfriend of Brian Ortega. And to be honest, to Cortez, she deserves to be a lot more known, because she is a good fighter. But she's not. She comes in, she's wrestle heavy, and she needs those eyes on her. And fighting Molly McCann, you'll have the eyes on the world on you. And, same with Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas is ranked number 15 at flyweight. never won at flyweight, but it is what it is. And
Yep.
then, we had, another piece went out on the site last night. Miranda Maverick called out Molly McCann. It's a tougher fight than Antonina.
Again, that's a good call. I think Maverick might be too much for her. I think Maverick takes that one.
I mean, Maverick's got a fight there. She's got a fight book next month on the Usman Edwards card against Shayna Young. So I think if she gets on, if she doesn't take any damage, she gets a big performance against Shayna Young next month. She gets on that mic and she calls out Molly McCann again. Put
Light it up.
Molly McCann and Paddy Pimblett for me don't fight in the UK for a long time. They're pay-per-view cards only now, and they have to both be on the same card all the time now, because it's just the interaction for the UFC alone. They'd be stupid not to. And
I agree.
If I'm Miranda Maverick, I absolutely go out there. I fully focus on Shayna Young, but then I go out there and I call out Molly McCann for an MSG showdown. And there's no reason why the UFC wouldn't book it. It's certainly a step up in competition for McCann, and it's a chance for Miranda Maverick to get eyes on her. And to, like I say, fighting Meatball Molly McCann is going to get a lot of media attention, and the same with fighting Paddy Pimblett. So, she'd be stupid not to call them.
Could you imagine these two at MSG?
Exactly. I think that's the way to go. And the timelines work out. July to November is,
fine.
You're talking 4 months for two guys that took next to no damage. Paddy went into the second round. The damage that he took was minimal. He didn't have a scratch on him.
He said he hurt his knee hitting this guy's skull, which maybe is true. But
that's icing it for a couple of days, and then he'll be back. It's not a Tom Aspinall knee injury. But, Hannah Goldie landed 9 strikes on Molly McCann. Molly is absolutely untested. And once she gets over the hangover, she'll be straight back in training camp, I think.
Well, it was a great performance, and you build stars. We know in reality, Molly McCann is not going to fight for a title anytime in her career, but she can take that Chris Lieben spot of she's going to have fun fights out every time. You can put her on a pay-per-view because we know that she's an action fighter, and I think she might have an idea of that. She called out Antonina Shevchenko, she has some idea. You know what I mean?
And, Shevchenko's coming off one win, a split decision win, and that was a couple of weeks, or last week, or a couple of weeks ago. She's not ranked. And, she has a clear flaw in her game. It's the wrestling round. Why not? That's a great call out. Get the longest winning streak in the UFC, the 5-3. Get that 4th win against Shevchenko, which, I'd be picking, if that was fight to be made, I'd be picking Molly McCann because of the flaw in Shevchenko's game. And like I said, I think it's a good call out, and it makes a lot of sense. So, again, for me, it doesn't matter who she fights, but it's MSG. MSG is the fight to make. Her and Paddy Pimblett walking around New York will attract the eyes of the world, and it's the fight. It's the location for both of these guys, and it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to stick them in a, like this weekend, stick them in a Dallas, Texas, because there's too much going on. When the UFC comes to New York, you're gonna see it. Especially, we don't know who's headlining the card, but potentially a McGregor headline.
Could be.
It makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, to put these guys on that card.
Chandler Poirier is rumored for that card as well.
Exactly, and that will get the eyes of the world, because you can imagine the highlight reel of Chandler Poirier, 2 spinning back elbows by Molly McCann, Paddy Pimblett calling out, preaching mental health. The promo writes itself. The UFC, if you're listening, me and Tim will sort that out for you.
And hire us. So anyway, there's only 2 other fights I really want to talk about on the card. If there's any I skip over, let's just link back. But Nathaniel Wood goes up in weight class, sized it. This was the one I said I haven't watched a single fight. You said watch the Nathaniel Wood. You weren't kidding. This kid, I'm excited for the future of Nathaniel Wood. That speed advantage. He had a power advantage. He defended takedowns in this fight. When he was taken down, he got up. Nathaniel Wood going up in weight. What do you say about this kid?
Yeah, I'm so chuffed for Nathaniel Wood after he had the match, the match fight, two fighters drop out on him.
Yeah.
And everybody knows, if they read any of my articles, if they listen to the podcast week in, week out, they know that I love a low leg kick. Nathaniel Wood chewed up the leg of Charles Rosa like I haven't seen in a number of weeks. I say that. We saw it with Emily Ducote and Jessica Penne last week, which we didn't touch on. But, this was completely different. And I don't know why leg strikes are not counted as knockdowns. you have thrown a strike and caused your opponent to be grounded.
Yes.
Due to their inability to stand up.
Yeah.
Count is a knockdown. Nathaniel Wood wasn't credited with any knockdowns in this fight, and yet he knocked Charles Rosa down about 4 or 5 times due to Rosa being unable to stand on the leg following a low calf kick.
And I agree with what you're saying, because knocking down a professional fighter due to leg kicks might be a bigger feather in your cap. That is more important, because this isn't fighting like me, knocking me down with leg kicks. Professional fighter who's trained his life absorbing leg kicks. You knocked him down? That should be worth something. That's notable.
Exactly. And, I think a couple of the scorecards had it. Yeah, 2 30-26s and a 30-27. That's fair.
Yeah.
But you could be talking 30-25 for some of these, especially I think the second round, he knocked him down 3 or 4 times with the leg kick. Nathaniel Wood looked absolutely phenomenal. And what was interesting is obviously he's a smaller guy coming up. He looked a lot smaller in there, and he still took licks off Charles Rosa and continued to walk forward. He played up to the crowd when he needed to. There was that dicey moment at the end of the first round with the choke, but he managed to fight out of that. And Nathaniel Wood, for the performance, is unlucky not to get 50K, but take a moment to tip your cap to Charles Rosa. I'm hoping that they got a little extra bonus, because Charles Rosa was in there for 15 minutes. Fewer fighters would have completely crumbled with the pressure that Wood was putting on, and the leg kicks that he was landing, and the fact that he was landing clean, and he was just, he had the crowd on his side, or Rosa had the crowd against him. Phenomenal performance by Wood, phenomenal heart and grit shown by Charles Rosa, and they were really unlucky not to get the fight of the night.
I agree. I was hoping to see a performance bonus next to Nathaniel Wood's name. I'm let down, but his stock rises. He's in the back with a cup of tea. Made some moments. He made some major highlights in this fight. The only other fight I really want to talk about in this card is Muhammad Mokaev getting a very close, couldn't get anything done against Charles Johnson. Both you and I credited Charles Johnson with this guy's better than most people are giving him credit for, and he showed that. This is a fight where he lost, and his stock probably rose. Muhammad Mokaev probably didn't get much of a rise in his stock value in this one. Charles Johnson is very good. He was countering takedowns. He was stalling him at every opportunity. I don't know if Muhammad Mokaev is going to be the guy to break John Jones' record. He has about a year and a half left, but both of these guys will be top 5 in 2 years. I have no doubt about that. What do you think of the performance? What do you think of the future of these two young men?
Yeah, for sure. And like we alluded to, I think we spoke, if we didn't speak about it on the podcast, we spoke about it off air. Charles Johnson is probably better than a lot of UFC flyweights that are already on the roster. This is his debut.
Yes.
The haircut aside, he fought a very smart fight of, I'm not going to put myself in danger. I don't want to be finished on my UFC debut by this guy who's enjoying a hot streak.
Yeah.
But you've got to credit Muhammad Mokaev. 12 takedowns. It broke the UFC flyweight record for a 3-round fight.
Mm-hmm.
He was never in danger, Mokaev. And from what I hear, he had a bit of a botched weight cut. He put on too much weight after his weigh-in. So he was fighting up almost, he could have weighed in at featherweight. So it's 145 pounds, which, and that's just inexperience. I think he's still only 21. He's 21. He was born in the year 2000.
No, he's 21.
Makes me feel a little bit sick, to be honest. But it's,
I know.
I mean, if you look at his stats are all skewed, but he takedown average 11.27 per fight. I mean, Muhammad Mokaev is the future of the division. There's no doubt. At 21, he's got another 15, 16 years in the game. There was chances there for, I think, Johnson to do a little bit better than he did, rather than just accepting the position.
Was the guillotines close at the end? They looked close to me, but he just kind of gave them up.
Kind of let them go. Yeah, it was. I think it was a very much. I'm coming in here to attempt to stop the hype. And after the first round, he was taken down how many times in the first round? 4 of 11 takedowns in the first round landed by Mokaev, controlled for 4 minutes and 8 seconds. I think Charles Johnson then realized, right, I'm not going to be able to out wrestle this guy. He's going to be relentless. I'm just coming here not to be finished. And fair play to Charles Johnson. Like I say, he gets, without a doubt, another 2 or 3 fights in the UFC to prove himself. He's the LFA champion. But for Mokaev, I don't think you match him in the top 15 next. I
don't think so either.
I think you match him just outside of the top 15. Not even sure who you match him with because I can't lie. I don't know the flyweight division and awfully well, but you're looking at guys in the top 15. Manel Kape's ranked number 13. Tim Elliott ranked number 10. These are tough fights for Mokaev. Tim Elliott's got far too much experience to fight Mokaev. I think he dominates Mokaev, to be honest.
But styles makes sense. Like they're the only wrestlers in this division who are very like wrestler heavy. Askarov and Mokaev, right? Like the rest of them are kind of strikers. Like that's a good division if you're a wrestler. But I think Charles Johnson can get a lot of wins in that top 15.
Yeah, for sure. And like we say, these guys will probably be top 5 in. We'll sit down in 2 years and they'll probably be top 5. For Mokaev, I think he just needs to accept. John Jones is a freak. That record is going to stand. Macy Barber is the last person that I can remember really saying, I'm going to break that record, and look what happened to her. Exactly. She's not even close to a title shot. And yes, she had the injury, but she's now already older than Jones was.
Yeah.
For Mokaev, don't rush it. You're 2-0 in the UFC, and you've already gone 15 minutes in the UFC, which is in a, who would have thought 2 or 3 years ago we were talking about in a crowded arena, but that is a big factor for Mokaev. That's the most people who probably would have fought in front of, both maybe March. I don't know the crowd numbers, but for Mokaev, don't rush it. You've got your whole fighting career ahead of you, and yeah, just take it as it comes and take it easy a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know. I hope one of his managers kind of tell him that, because him at least is not saying that. So we'll see who wins out. I think, like you said, maybe another development fight kind of here and there to really like clean up the game a little bit, because he's obviously, all the talent is there. It's just without a doubt, it's just kind of like putting it all together in the cage, and also where people like he's a little bit more wrestler. He's a little bit more John Fitch than he is Matt Hughes, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in this fight, he seemed happy to not search for too. He hasn't been accredited with any sub attempts. He seemed happy to not try and manipulate Johnson into giving up his neck or giving up his back. He seemed happy to hold him there. Not land. 12 significant strikes landed for each man, so they landed the same amount of significant strikes, despite the fact that Mokaev was on top for pretty much 15 minutes. And
that's not Habib would never do that. Habib was trying to murder people. He's like, exactly. Oh, the sub isn't working. Ground and pound. If the ground and pound's not working, sub. He's always.
And for us, we're excited to see Mokaev next, because we know that he can strike. We know that he can wrestle. For the casual fan, I don't think they're going to be tuning into the next Mohamed Mokaev fight based on that performance.
I'm excited.
I mean, we are, of course, yeah. But based on that performance, you don't tune into the next Mokaev fight. And looking further up the card, you don't tune into the next Mark Diakiese fight, because he was just wrestling heavy, boring. But why not? If you're Mark Diakiese, you've had a bit of a rough ride as of late. Why not wrestle? And the same. For me, the other standout performance was, the notable performance of Jai Herbert picking up another a win. Finally, he's getting matched with reasonable matches, and it's a competitive fight. He lost the first round, in my opinion, and then won the next 2 against Kyle Nelson. For Jai Herbert, I think whoever he's matched up with next, hopefully it's another favourable matchup or reasonable matchup, shall we say, because he hasn't been given reasonable matchups so far in the UFC. But I want him to do 2 or 3 rounds hard sparring in the back before he comes out, because he was flat in that first round. He didn't look like he was ready to go. And lucky for him, he did manage to rally in those last 2 rounds and really put it all together and obviously get his hand raised. But it was a little bit disappointing that first round. But we saw the potential that Jai Herbert has to really make a bit of a stint on this lightweight division.
Yeah, I've wondered about like Jai, like what is the future of this guy? I think he's underperforming for how good he is, but maybe I'm just a bad judge of like how good he actually is. I don't know. Yeah. I can't tell. I can't read
exactly.
this.
I mean, when you're facing Topuria, Trinaldo, Moicano in your first 3 losses,
those are big. Yeah, those are
exactly.
tough fight. Yeah.
And the other disappointment on the card for me was Mandy Baum. She looked not good.
She's looked bad in her UFC. I wrote a prospect watch for her last year, and I look like an idiot now.
I was excited. I was very excited for it. She lost a unanimous decision to Ariane Lipski in in her first fight. No shame in that. Ariane Lipski, she's been ranked, I believe, at points. And she is a solid fighter. Victoria Leonardo,
she's not that good. Victoria Leonardo.
If Mandy Baum's got any, she is still young. She's not that young, Mandy Baum. I thought she was a lot younger than she is. She's in her 30s now.
9 fights or 8 fights or whatever. Yeah, I know.
You'd expect, personally, I expect Mandy Baum to be probably putting Victoria Leonardo away, but fair play to Leonardo. She ground it out and she got it done. But it's disappointing if you're a Mandy Baum fan, because she's on paper and her past fights would suggest she's a lot better than she's showing, but it's just not quite coming to fruition.
We had two German journalists there. One was from DAZN, and I forget the other one. But they were both like big publications. But both of them just said like, "We're here for Mandy Baum. Like that's why we were sent here, is to cover her." And after the fight, I was like, "No, what a waste of time for you."
Exactly.
They're like,
she.
That's how bad her performance has been. She has 2 fights left on the contract, is what I'm told. But like, I don't know what you do with Mandy. She's not really living up to the hype that she was like that I expected her. She's underperforming by a long shot.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Victoria Leonardo, but if you can't beat Victoria Leonardo, who do you fight next? A promotional newcomer? I mean,
yeah,
it's dicey for Mandy Baum. She needs a big performance in her next fight.
Anything else on this card that you want to cover off? I think there's just 2 fights we haven't talked about, but we'll go ahead. Yeah, we got 10 minutes to talk about UFC upcoming 277, and let me tell you, from someone looking at numbers, from listening to the crowd, listening to the Twitter sphere, this has less than. I don't know what to say on, like, this has no excitement surrounding this card,
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's an exciting card because there's a few competitive fights, but
not a stay-up card. Honestly,
doubt,
no. I can't believe I'm saying this. The 2 main cards are quite good. That flyweight title fight is very good. That's it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued as to what happens in the women's bantamweight fight.
Absolutely intrigued.
But I would be surprised if Amanda Nunes. Let's go into it. Obviously, Amanda Nunes, Julianna Peña, the last fight and ended in the second round. I've got a piece coming out later on today. Julianna Peña's keys to victory. I've watched that first fight about 15 to 20 times because it only lasts 7-8 minutes.
Dodge the jab.
Julianna Peña looked pretty bad in that first round. She got knocked down by a jab. She got knocked, the weight was taken from underneath her with a leg kick. She was pretty much dominated on the floor. She couldn't really get her submissions going on the floor. Second round starts. Amanda Nunes smells blood and then just starts hooking and going. And Julianna Peña, she's constantly dummying the rear leg kick. And then it's the check left hook that was landing. And then Nunes, for whatever reason, just went full Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg, and thought, I am the heavier hitter. If I land on her chin, I will knock her out. And that didn't happen. And, this is legacy-defining fight for Amanda Nunes. If Amanda Nunes loses to Julianna Peña again.
You're a fan of boxing, especially a fan of women's boxing. This must have been frustrating to rewatch that fight again, of just like, how is the ducking jab just every time? How is someone not dodging that every time out, right?
I mean, I don't know what happened to her in between rounds. I don't know what happened in between rounds,
Sorry, I interrupted though.
No. I mean, like you say, how can she not? She's not dodging the jab. She's not even blocking the jab. It's just landing, and it's just landing, and it's just land. Put your hands up, or throw a front kick up the middle, or at least when Peña throws a jab, come round the jab, or put Peña off wanting to throw that jab and land that jab. If you get cracked with a jab, it is what it is. It's a fair strike. Get cracked with another one, okay, she's a little bit quicker than I thought on the feet. Get cracked with another, it's like, okay, what's going on now? 7, 8, 9 jabs later, prevent her from throwing that jab. Throw the high kick so that she has to. We saw her knock Holly Holm out cold with a high kick. Throw the high kick so that Peña has to get her hands up so that she can't be throwing that jab. Come around the jab with a looping hook. Throw straight shots, jab with the jabber. But no, Amanda Nunes decided to try and receive the jab, and it wasn't even a counter. It was jab, right, you're back in position, I'll hook. Okay, you blocked it. Peña did a great job of mixing it up with the jab and the check left hook, and she rocked Amanda Nunes because Amanda Nunes was standing quite far out of range. So when she did loop in to try and jab Peña was able to time her with the check left hook, and it knocked Amanda Nunes back on her heels a couple of times. But for Julianna Peña, do what you did in the first fight for the first couple of minutes, and then you've got to mix it up. A little alluding to the article that I've got coming out, a little video analysis using the GIFs and stuff.
Links
Julianna Peña, nice one. Yeah, link will be in the description. But Julianna Peña has to make this. If I'm Julianna Peña, I make this boring. I receive boos. I'd grind out Amanda Nunes along the fence for the first 15 minutes. Julianna Peña has shown that she is good in the clinch. She's slightly shorter than Amanda Nunes. Mm-hmm. And against Germaine de Randamie, she really drove that head up in the neck of Germaine de Randamie. Yes, she was caught in a guillotine because she shot him for the takedown. Don't shoot him for the takedown against Amanda Nunes unless it's a clinch and a trip, like an inside or an outside trip, which she did against Germaine de Randamie again, and which Nunes was taken down by Raquel Pennington. She needs to fatigue Nunes, and then she can stand with her. And then another one. So clinch, wrestle, and stall is one of the keys to victory. The second key to victory is straight punches for Julianna Peña. She came around with a lot of looping hooks. Now she starts to throw these straight punches, and then she comes with the overhands and the looping hooks. And she works her body a little bit on the inside. She'll keep Amanda Nunes guessing, and Amanda Nunes won't be able to come around with her looping hooks and her straights if she's striking at the same time as Peña. And the third is tighten up your defense. At the end of the day, Julianna Peña, yes, she receives a lot of shots by Amanda Nunes in that first fight, especially that first round, but she got knocked down by a jab. She got a calf pretty much eaten up pretty badly. She needs to tighten up her defense because lightning might not strike twice for Peña, and she might not get a Nunes on an off day. Now, Nunes has obviously ditched ATT and started her own team, which I'm excited to see. In a way,
never know if this is a benefit. Other guys have done it, and it worked for Overeem. For Gilbert Melendez, it was the worst thing he ever did.
Exactly. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I don't think it's broke for Amanda Nunes. She was caught. It just seemed like she was caught cold in that second round. But you can't beat Valentina Shevchenko twice, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Raquel Pennington, Chris Cyborg, Holly Holm.
History,
pretty much every exactly. Right? She's beaten everybody. She's beaten a who's who. And then you suffer one loss, and let's be honest, it was a freak loss. Peña was the biggest underdog on the card, and you ditch your team. Will it work? Will it not? We'll find out on Saturday night. But like we say, we'll find out on Sunday morning because this is not a card to stay up for. But for me, Amanda Nunes' legacy depends on this fight. If she loses again to Peña, her GOAT status is she can't be classed in the GOAT conversation for me.
Which it's too bad because statistically, if we talked about one of John Jones, the real feather in the cap is that he beat 6 champions in a row. Amanda Nunes is in that conversation where she beat every champion between 2 weight classes, and then we're still but we just can't quite make the argument, and I want to make the argument for her, but yeah, you gotta really prove it here. But this is a must-win fight. If she loses 2 in a row to Julianna Peña, does she retire? Does she retire, and where does her legacy sit on 2 losses?
That's the thing. I think this, like I say, it's legacy defining for Nunes. She has to win this fight, and she has to look dominant doing it. If she grinds out a split decision for Peña, you'll probably get a third fight because there's no one else really in the women's bantamweight division aside from maybe Ketlin Vieira, and that's not an entertaining fight for anyone, to be honest. Amanda Nunes has to look good. If she's going to win this fight, she has to look good doing it. For Peña, she can make this a boring fight. She can make this a ground out decision victory where she just edges a 3-2 or a 4-1. She can. If I'm Peña, I get booed by the crowd because I'm stalling. I'm John Fitching Amanda Nunes. I'm not looking to Khabib Amanda Nunes. Because why not? You've already got that blockbuster win over Amanda Nunes. No one will remember the second fight, but they'll remember the first. And then she moves on and she holds on to her belt.
Yeah.
I think if Amanda Nunes to win this, she's got to win in she's got to finish Peña and look solid doing so. If she cruises through a Felicia Spencer type fight or a Jermaine Demandamy type fight when she just makes it a bit boring, it's a win, but is it a legacy defining win? Have you really put a stamp on that rivalry? No, you haven't. So, for Amanda Nunes, I think she really has to stamp out any doubt that she is the superior fighter and that she needs to knock Peña out or finish Peña via submission and look flawless doing it.
Yeah, major cosign with all of that. She's older than she ever was before. Maybe motivation was in question, and I understand all those sentiments. This is athletics. Like, that stuff happens. Like, it just
Exactly.
You age up.
Fighters get old overnight, and whether it's just caught up with Nunes having to drop down from featherweight to bantamweight to featherweight to bantamweight. Or she had COVID. She had quite a bad bout of COVID. That's why the first fight between the two was cancelled. Maybe a career and a life has just caught up with her. Obviously, she's got the child now as well. Maybe life's just caught up with her, and she can't. Yeah. She hasn't got the same motivation like you alluded to.
And I understand. So I'm just looking at the statistics now. Between two weight classes, between featherweight and bantamweight, she has beat every single champion between two weight classes. She has almost done it a third because she beat Shevchenko. If she beat Nico Montano, it would have been 3 weight classes. But Nico Montano is
I think
ruining
it's safe to say that she would have beat Nico Montano. I think I could say that with fair.
Are you sure?
Styles make fights, but I'd put my house on Amanda Nunes, unfortunately.
And what a ruined statistic. Thanks, Nico. One more fight on this card because we are running out of time, and I guarantee no one else wants to talk about anything else. This fight is going to be chaotic. I'm so excited for Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara-France. I don't know what to predict. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be awful. It's going to be amazing at times. I expect a full mess and a full masterclass in this bout. I don't know what to expect. What do you see in this one coming in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I watched the fight a couple of days ago, and I watched it again this morning at the gym, and the first fight wasn't awfully competitive aside from the first round. I think Kai Kara-France won the first round, Brandon Moreno won the second, and Brandon Moreno dominated the third round. He broke Kai Kara-France in that third round, in my opinion. Kai had his back up against the fence. Brandon Moreno's landing on him at will. The high kicks were landing. Something that Brandon Moreno did really well was the check left hook to the body and the check left uppercut.
Solid,
sort of like a looping sort of almost. It was an uppercut because obviously it's coming from sort of his waist, but it was the lead hand and it was coming sort of round, but it was sort of almost landing like an uppercut, but he was throwing it like a hook, sort of diagonally almost in the first fight. And you compare that to the Brandon Moreno that we saw against Figgy. Brandon Moreno's got so much better, and so is Kai Kara-France. But I can see Kai Kara-France needs to throw a lot more feints because he barely threw any. And surprisingly, coming from working with Adesanya, Brad Riddell, Volkanovski, these guys are famous for their feints at City Kickboxing.
Yes, Kai
Kara-France has to throw more feints in this one because he didn't throw an awful lot of feints against Brandon Moreno. And I think Moreno kind of saw everything. He saw everything in front of him coming because he was throwing the 1-2. And I think Kai Kara-France is the heavier hitter, potentially even the faster fighter. And yet, I think Brandon Moreno is the better striker, despite being slightly slower, ever so slightly slower. These are flyweights. These are fast guys, but slightly slower and with slightly less power. And I still think he's a better striker, which is ironic. But, how do you deal with a heavy hitting striker like Kai Kara-France? I mean, you fight Deiveson Figueiredo 3 fights in a row.
Insane.
I mean, Brandon Moreno is it's drilled into him for 3 fights in a row to not get hit by a big looping shot. And yes, he was tagged a bit in the last fight, more than he was in the first 2.
Mm-hmm.
But what good preparation that is for Brandon Moreno to be able to stand in front of a heavy hitter and not get hit. Now, I don't think Kai Kara-France holds the power that Figgy does. I don't think anyone at flyweight holds the power that Figgy does. But Moreno has prepared well for Kai Kara-France by fighting Deiveson Figueiredo. And I expect this fight to be really, really good. Both guys have improved massively since they last fought each other. the last fight, when was that fight? That was Usman Covington won 2019.
Yeah, it's forever ago, right? They're different fights.
Completely different fights. Kara France had 3 fights in the UFC. Moreno had joined the UFC. He'd left the UFC. He'd rejoined the UFC. He's coming off 3 losses. Brandon Moreno, and it was a phenomenal fight then, and I think this will be fight of the night without a doubt.
Oh yeah, I completely co-sign with you. I expect full chaos. I'm going to pick Kai Kara France just because Brandon Moreno, like you said, is the better fighter. Brandon Moreno will give it up at times, just to every once in a while. Those are some of the things that he really learned in the God of War fights, where he's like, I can't brawl. I can't just fight. I need to jab and move my feet. I think Kai Kara France is going to draw him into a gunfight. I fully see Brandon Moreno winning 2 rounds and Kai Kara France sloppily winning 3 close rounds. I love Kai Kara France, and I like Brandon Moreno a lot too. This is going to be a chaotic fight.
Yeah, for sure. I don't see a finish in this one unless Moreno manages to catch Kai Kara France and then maybe snatches a guillotine or something, a panic guillotine, and Kara France gives a panic tap. But I actually see it going the other way. I think Moreno is probably the more high-level experience. Cody got Kai Kara France coming off Cody Garbrandt, which Cody's got no business being down at 125 in my opinion. And then the Askar Askarov fight last time out, which is a very, very close fight. Brandon Moreno, he's got more high-level experience. He's been scheduled for 5 rounds now 3 times in a row. Kara France, I expect him to come in phenomenal shape, ready for 25 hard minutes. But it's just that final round where Kara France seemed to break Moreno seemed to break Kara France ever so slightly. He didn't no chance Kara France quits, but Brandon Moreno really, really stuck it on him in that 3rd round, and Kara France was tired. So that 4th and 5th round could really be the deciding rounds. I think Brandon Moreno's got that, just that little more experience. And I think Kara France, if he does lose this, I think he comes again. He's only young. He's 29, so I think he comes again, and I think he fights for a title again if he loses this, and of course if he wins this, he definitely fights for a title probably in January, February next year against Figgy.
Oh yeah, it's a fun one. It's a banger. I fully expect this one to be a banger. I'm just going to quickly run down the card. Derek Lewis, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Pantoja versus Alex Perez. That is a good one. Megamed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. That's another banger. Alex Moreno versus Matthew Simmonsberger. Drew Dober and Rafael Alves. And Drakkar Klose versus Rafael Garcia. Anything else? Anything you want to throw in on any of those?
No, we've got the second fight in the UFC of Blood Diamond, the best name to ever walk the UFC. Disappointing debut, and they've given him another guy in Orion Kosuke he's good. I think he is good, and it's another tough fight for Blood Diamond. They obviously they see something in Blood Diamond that maybe we don't, but it is what it is. That Drakkar Klose Rafa Garcia fight is good, I guess. I mean, if you don't tune in for any of the fights before the main card, I wouldn't be surprised. Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith, I'm really liking the way Anthony Smith's talking this week. He's saying, Ankalaev isn't the boogeyman that everybody thinks he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he's got good striking, but I've got good striking. Yes, he's got a good ground game, but I've got a good ground game. And I think that's going to be there's a potential that's the most competitive fight on the entire card. Even the co-main event that we've just said, how close that one is. Anthony Smith, like I say, speaking really well this week heading into the fight. He's off the back of 3 straight wins.
Yep.
I'm excited for that one. And, like you say, Pantoja versus Perez is another good fight. Flyweight, I think Pantoja's got a little bit more experience, and he actually hasn't. He's got one less fight. I think he's got a little bit more high-level experience. And with Perez being out all that time, he's had about 90 fights with Matt Schnell fall off. So I think it's for Perez, it's good to see another face, be training for another face. We'll have to see. Perez's last fight was that Figueiredo fight, which that was what it was. It didn't quite go to plan for Perez. And then Derek Lewis Pavlovich, if that goes past 5 or 7 minutes, I don't really have an awful lot of interest in it. But Derek Lewis, yet again, returning to Dallas, Texas. He's never won in Texas. He lost to Cyril Gane, lost to Tai Tuivasa, but let's hope that Derek Lewis can get that win, because that last knockout against Tai Tuivasa, the elbow, was a bad one. So let's see what Derek Lewis is all about.
All right, we've gone well over time. Frazer, let's get out of here. Your links will be down below from Tim Wheaton, Frazer Krohn at MMA Sucka. Anything else we want to cover off?
Nope, absolutely nothing this week because it's a pretty quiet week. We've got Contender Series, but yeah, just keep it locked to MMA Sucka. We've got news articles coming out each and every day, multiple times a day. So yeah, keep it locked.
Cheers.